In questa intervista registrata a fine 2021, Big Luca e Dan Kennedy disquisiscono delle membership. Scoprirai se queste sono un buon modello di business, cosa sono in realtà le membership e come funzionano realmente, e molto altro. Buona visione.
Okay, Dan. So, I have a question about membership. And as you know, I am building up my membership group. And I receive a lot of questions about that. And people think it's easy. I have told my students the criticalities of a membership, the cost of traffic, the fact that you may not recoup the cost of traffic with a membership on the front end if you don't have a strong back end and you don't have the money to do it. However, recurring income is good. What can you tell us about that?
So it used to be easy, but it is not easy now. And it hasn't been easy for a while. So for the most part, it is not a profitable business in and of itself. Once upon a time it was. It is not now. The combination of cost of acquisition and attrition, the fallout of those who flit, who come and quickly leave for one reason or another, eats pretty much all the profit. So it is really a means of organizing what I colloquially call a herd. It is a means of organizing a group of customers who A, will pay attention, and B, feel some sort of affinity to you and to the group, which makes them more likely to buy from it than from others. And it provides some price elasticity along with it. So you think of it as an organizing system. That's really its virtue, its purpose, its best use. Attention is currency now. It's in shorter and shorter and shorter supply. Not attention span, that's different. And Jerry Seinfeld's right. There's really no such thing as limited attention span. There's being boring. So I'm not talking about attention span. I'm talking about focused attention when there are so many things to pay attention to. I mean, I grew up in an era in the United States when there were 3 television stations. That's it. 3. And pretty much whatever evening news the family watched, NBC, ABC, or CBS, they pretty much stayed with that channel for the rest of the night because you had to get up off the couch and walk over and change the damn channel on the phone, on the TV. The kid was actually the remote control. The way the remote control worked is Dad and Mom were sitting on the furniture. The kid was laying on the floor, and Dad yelled, "Change the channel." That was the remote control. But there were only 3 channels. So we had a consensus campfire conversation. The next day, a third of the country watched something and came in and talked about it. Well, think about that now. There's 5,000 choices on Netflix alone, all arguing for now, most of it's crap, but that's neither here nor there. You know, think of podcasts. I mean, my joke is there's a podcast for every human being because every human being's got one. So, I mean, the choices, yelling, "Pay attention to me, pay attention to me, pay attention to me," are incredible. So the membership concept, really the first time I saw it, really understood it. I was in my young adulthood when Hugh Hefner's Playboy clubs were still a big deal here. They were in 30, 40 cities. It really was never about the skin. The gals were in buddy costumes, for God's sakes. They're one-piece bathing suits, with a tail stuck on the butt. I mean, it wasn't that big a deal then, although now. But you belonged to the club. You had a silver key, a gold key, or a platinum key, and you had to show your key to get in, and only key holders were there. And there was a little showroom that you always had great seats. There were some special events just for platinum key holders. And one of the things, so lunch is like you go to the Playboy Club and you have a big cheeseburger and a salad bar. Well, you drove past, from our office in Phoenix, my partner at the time and I, we probably drove past 20 restaurants you could have stopped at and had everybody's good at cheeseburger and everybody good at salad bar. And by the way, the waitresses were dressed at least as sexy as at the Playboy Club. And you drove past them all to go into downtown Phoenix, pay to park your car, and go up in the elevator, go to the Playboy Club. Why? Because you were a member. That's why. So membership concept has deep roots, long history, works on people's psyche. We have AARP, American Association of Retired Persons. It really was set up to sell insurance, is really what it was set up for. And it sells all sorts of things now, and it works because of membership concept. So this is this is an organizing system. Network marketing is an organizing system of holding a herd together inside some fences so you can sell things to them. Just plain subscription is an organizing system. So the virtue of this one is you are getting paid, maybe not all the way to profit, but you are getting paid to run your organizing system in order now to create profit with other goods and services and opportunities brought to those members, because they will pay more attention than they would if they weren't members, and they will tend to be price elastic about it because they are members. So earlier, one of the things we talked about was, the nature of a dividend stock is you're really getting paid to own the stock. So the membership concept as an organizing system, you're actually getting paid now to market to customers. If you weren't, you'd be paying to market to customers. So if you think about it that way, it's still pretty powerful. Now, it requires meaning. Membership concept requires strong identity, strong affinity, strong philosophical agreement, the belief that it's real, which is best helped if it is real, and then it works pretty well. But it is about ascension from one level to the next, and almost all your profits going to be in the top third of an ascension pyramid. And it is about being of a lot of value and use to the members in the top third of that pyramid, because you need to exploit the attention advantage you're creating by the membership.
Right. So how to diminish or at least contain the churn rate of a membership? So how to keep people inside?
Well, so the first thing I'll say is a lot of people obsess about this for no good reason. So meaning there's going to be a high attrition rate. I mean, there's things you can and should do. And so I'll answer your question, but with this as a preface. The objective can't be the lowest possible attrition rate and how do we keep everybody? Because again, you'll wind up keeping nobody because you'll be diluting everything you do to the lowest common denominator. You'll be afraid of offending anybody, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it can't be that. You will bring people in for whom it is legitimately inappropriate for them to be there. They're not philosophically compatible. They don't do anything ever with what they get. Their particular business will never say this publicly, but their particular business just doesn't lend itself to the kind of strategies you or I provide. So they should leave. So they come in, they kick around for a few months. Gee, this isn't for me. And in many cases, they're right. Again, we're running an organizing system. So we're sifting and sorting. And we actually want to get rid of wholly inappropriate people so we can best monetize the appropriate people. Having said that, retention, reducing the churn rate. The first factor is who you're putting in. Selection, appropriateness. Because if you put a bunch of inappropriate people in, you're going to have a high churn rate and nothing you do will matter. So sometimes it's their income, it's their transaction size, it's their willingness to work, it's their whatever. So like if you, in the grand old days of affiliate marketing, like for the no BS business, sometimes the guys with the biggest lists were the worst affiliates for it. Now they put the most number of people in a promotion, in a launch, because they had the biggest list. But their list was full of people inappropriate for us. We're best for people that got real businesses, brick and mortar. They're invested in them. They're dentists, they're lawyers, they're car repair people, they're et cetera. They may also be info marketers, but they got a real business. A big list of all pure, I don't want to do anything but online, they really weren't a good match. The guy that had a much smaller list, but they were all orthodontists, he was gold for us. Their transaction size is right. They love us the minute they see us, et cetera, et cetera. So the first issue is who you put in. It should not be underestimated. The second issue is controlling the immediate shock. So you are bringing a stranger into a strange land when you bring them into membership. So think about not really knowing what the Playboy Club was all about. and somebody joins and goes there for the first time, and holy God, there's half-naked women in here. I didn't expect this. So you got this little window of time early that you have to orient people. Here's what you bought. Here's the planet you've landed on. Here's how things work around here. Here's proof you made a good decision. Here's what the language means, right? Or they feel it appropriate whether they are or not. They feel dumb, so they leave because nobody wants to feel dumb, right? So the second factor is the early orientation, getting them over the hump, if you will, of understanding of what's going on around here. A third factor is engagement. So active, not just passive. So if you can get them to come to online training classes and you monitor, are they coming? Are they not coming? Are they logging on? Are they not logging on? Are they finishing? Are they not finishing? You pursue the ones who didn't come. You pursue the ones who bailed out. You get engagement, not just passive receipt of information. That's a third factor. The fourth factor, and the best retention strategy, is usually Ascension. In almost every one of these membership businesses, there's a trigger point or two, a Rubicon that if they cross it, their likelihood of staying goes up by multiples. It may be different in different businesses. You got to figure it out. I can tell you, again, like in the business I built, getting them to an experience inside 4 physical walls with other excited members, a fast start class, their first conference, almost anything, had a significant impact on now the length of a retention. Because until then, they're the lone idiot in the basement paying attention to this. The reinforcement of real people. And hey, I met a doctor who's really into this, and I met this person, and they did this, and that is a big Rubicon for us. The movement from the lowest level just to the next level, not high levels, but the higher priced, more involved subscription model. Big Rubicon. There's 3 others. I won't bore you with them because they're situational. But you got to figure out what these are. And then you got to manage them. So that's a big factor. The last factor, I would say, is that there's a lot of visible success. Demonstration that this works, whatever this is. If you belong to Weight Watchers and you've joined Weight Watchers, if you've joined Weight Watchers, you need to see a bunch of people who stuck with it and lost weight. And there needs to be recognition for them. So you need to see people getting awards, and you need to see people getting profiled in a newsletter. You need to see people getting interviewed online. So that if you aren't yet clicking, you feel it's pilot error. And you feel like if I just stick around, if I just hang in there, the light bulb's going to go off for me too. I'm going to get there. So that's like the last factor. Having said all of that, again, your goal has to be retention of good value, better value, and best value members, not democratic retention of all members.
And it also goes back to the price of the membership, I think. I mean, there is a difference between a $35 a month membership and a $400 a month membership. The quality of the customer is different. That's why I have a higher tier of membership, which is 347 euros a month. And I don't have a 47 one, for example, because I don't want to deal with the pain of them, you know.
So there's a false theory that says you can buy volume with lower price. So first of all, it's not necessarily true. It's true with commodity items to some extent. Although, often in commodity products, there's a brand name product. Think toilet paper. There's a brand name product and there's a generic product. The brand name product outsells the generic product, even though the generic product is cheaper. So the theory itself is flawed. Then, if it does apply, it applies to big, broad markets. But if you're dealing with smaller niche or subculture markets, it's not necessarily so applicable. All you'll do is trade down to less dollars per person interested in what it is that you do. So that's the second flaw with it. The third flaw is the one you mentioned, is that you may not want volume. You may want some balance of quality with quantity, right? So one of the ways you get that is barrier to entry, is somebody's got to be a little more serious to start with. And if on the back end, you have an Ascension pyramid, you have pricier services, then you got to be careful about flooding your system with low dollar amount customers who may not be able or willing to step up to pricier goods and services, but they require infrastructure to service them. You know, it doesn't cost 10 times more to service the $400 a month member than the $40 a month member. It's usually about 2 times more, 3 at the most. So you can get yourself into a big number, small net kind of position if you're not careful.
Yeah, which is what people do in Italy. They still have doubts about whether to go. I mean, I introduced the concept of the high ticket concepts in the Italian market. So you want more from less client because all that counts is margins. Otherwise, you don't have any net. You never build wealth. You never save money. But some people try to get that from low ticket, especially nowadays in Italy, low ticket affiliate marketing, which is, 17 euro CPA. All you're preying on is that Facebook never raises its prices because you're capped, but Facebook does do that.
Of course. So all media is cheap and then it isn't. And Facebook is no exception.
No.
And so, look, when I started working in the TV infomercial industry, in the United States in 1987, 1986. Any moron could make money. I mean, you could hang a camera from a hook on a ceiling, shoot a guy giving a seminar, slap it on TV, and you made money because you could buy the TV time for nothing. The stations all stopped broadcasting at midnight. If you wanted to buy a half an hour at 1 o'clock in the morning, they went like, what do you give us for it? $100. Great. Here, have your half hour, right? The minute that started to end, Darwinism set in, and the morons who were making money starved out, right? Crap, all of a sudden you had to be good.
Right?
Right?
Oh my God, yeah.
And I mean, look, it happens with every media. And even media that looks like it's free, it has a concealed cost. So email looks like it's free, but it burns out good customers with its frequency. So, oh, it's free, so I'll send it 9 times a day. Well, yeah, except you're running a cost by destroying your list, right? So all media is cheap until it isn't. And the vulnerability of a business based on the cheap media as a requirement, you better make a lot of money in a hurry, because one way or another, they're going to wake up. They'll see, if they don't get there any other way, the media owner will see, hey, wait a minute. All of a sudden, there's people standing in line who want to give us $100 for a half an hour at 2 o'clock in the morning. What the hell is this all about? And then all of a sudden, the half an hour is 1,000. And then all of a sudden, the half an hour is 10,000. Plus, we want 10% of the revenue. On and on and on. So it's a bad strategy to be dependent on bargain media for very long. You can launch there if you want, but you better figure out a better set of economics in a hurry. And price gaps matter. I told you the story earlier. We came in at $399 against an average $30,000. Now, the back end game was substantial. It really was just an organizing system to get people together who would pay attention. But I also came in at $499 in an environment where everything was $49. So price gaps are interesting. They often provide wedges, opportunities, but by and large, if you are getting there by being cheaper than the other guy, there will always be somebody dumb enough to be cheaper than you. There'll usually be a bunch of them. Now, they may all wind up at bankruptcy court, but they'll take you down with them on the way. And what customer are you getting? See, I say, look, it's always easier to organize a crowd of gullible people. The problem is they can be easily gulled by somebody else. It's always easy to organize a crowd of really cheap people getting stuff at really cheap prices. The problem is they can be taken away from you by somebody with nothing else to offer but a cheaper price. So that is not a position you really want to build in if you want to build to last, if you want sustainability in a marketplace. And so you have to be very careful about that thinking. And look, one of the ways to know a bad strategy when you see it is, quote, quote, everybody's doing it. because the majority is always wrong, especially about money. So when you see huge numbers of people copycatting each other, if you didn't know a smart thing to do, you got a good start. Don't do that.
Yeah, that's always the rule. This low ticket thing is really, I mean, in Italy, what they're doing, some of them right now, because you know that people want to make money online, and I'm trying to educate them on the fact that you can start maybe with money methods. I mean, you can start with drop shipping, you can start with Amazon FBA, you can start with whatever you want, but then you have to transition into building a business and knowing what you're doing. Now, there is people, for example, creating fake Facebook accounts and selling these low ticket products, which, by the way, are not even real. So, I mean, they're fake products. Some of them are broken. Some of them are not what people buy. You know, it's supposed to be a cream, but it's not a cream, or it's supposed to be something you fry, you cook the meat on, and it's a non-smoke frying pan, but then the smoke is there. And, you know, Italy, of course, is low in catching up with things, but how far would that go in the US, and how far do you see businesses that adopt these tricks go, and how long do they usually last in your experience?
So there's always crime, and there's always fads. Sometimes they overlap. Most of them don't last long in the United States, particularly if they're very visible online. Federal Trade Commission's pretty aggressive. State attorney generals are pretty aggressive. And the virtue of online is they can be lazy and aggressive. So the regulators don't have to do much to investigate. They just get to sit right now at home in their yoga pants and Google shit and find it. So you can get in trouble pretty quick here. On the other hand, the wheels of justice sometimes turn slowly, but eventually, if not immediately, most of it runs up against legal trouble. And principle, we talk principle, strategy, tactics.
Yes.
Early principle, locked in place for me, is no amount of money is worth even one night stay in a small gray concrete room with a roommate in an orange jumpsuit named Brutus. No thanks. I've seen it up close and personal with a couple of friends, and no thanks. You only need to visit somebody in prison once, by the way, on visiting day, to probably rethink your attitude about being really cute and clever with advertising one thing and delivering another and so forth. Beyond that, there's the metaphysical issue of karma. And beyond that, to your point, it's not a business. I mean, any more than robbing banks is a business. I mean, it is an enterprise, I'll give you that, but it's not a business because it has no sustainability. See, one of the purposes of business is not that you can leave it alone, but that the business becomes machine-like in many of its aspects, that it has foundational, evergreen products and services and marketing methods that don't have to be reinvented every week, every month, every 3 months, every 6 months. See, when I said earlier, as a copywriter, I get royalty checks for stuff I wrote 7 years ago. That means they're using that unchanged to attract money for 7 years. That's what we call a marketing asset. Now, you can't do that with something that is fundamentally fraudulent or that is going to disappoint, deeply disappoint the majority of its recipients. You can't. You will be hit and run, hit and run, hit and run, hit and run. And the biggest problem with being hit and run is sometime you won't have a hit. And now you have no income base. You have no asset base. You have no business base. There are internet marketers who, and some of them are my friends, but I compare them to pirates. You know, they come out of the cave and they get on the ship and they go out and they hit another ship and they load up the treasure and they come back to the cave and they hang out and they spend the treasure and they drink swill and they dance with the girls until they've used up the treasure, and then they load up and they go out again. All of them, at some point or another, even if they don't run afoul of the law, they hit a dry spell where there's no ships to pirate. And if they're sharing customers with affiliate marketing, they hit it even quicker. So for all of these reasons, it's a really bad idea. And you take really smart crooks. The sad thing is, the really smart ones, if they just applied themselves to legitimate enterprises, they're so smart, they would do really well. And they could build sustainable businesses. And why wouldn't you want a sustainable business instead of being a pirate? I mean, it makes no sense to me.
It makes no sense to me either. I mean, with all the focus that you spend, for example, in trying to fool Facebook, which, by the way, you're not doing for a long time, and creating fake accounts and delivering things which are not the right products, and trying, to wire money out of your country because I wouldn't be receiving the profits from certain things in the country in which I reside. I mean, please, if you just use that focus to create a proper business, a business which will be here 2 years from now, maybe with its problems, all the business got problems, but you will own the assets. And now we will talk about this, by the way. You will own a business, you will have a list. And one of the thing that I say is that if you don't control the assets, take affiliate marketing, for example, you don't control the products, you don't control the traffic, you don't have the list of the customers because the platform that sells the products keeps that. You don't control anything. Whereas recently we have transitioned, in my company now has got like 20 people. We have our own proprietary platform for streaming our digital content. So nobody can take that away from us. We have our own, even physical assets, which you can see behind me. And we try to get as much control over the components and the part of our business as we can. What can you tell us about the importance of assets? Because certain people seem not understanding its importance.
You're 100% right. So 2 points. One is the real equity, the only real equity, is in your customers, because products can be knocked off, products can be copied, products can become obsolete. If you want to see how little value there is in intellectual property, just look at any famous gurus a year after they die. In 9 out of 10 cases, the estate gives up on it and its value is zero. The inventory has gone in the dumpster. the master recordings are in a storage shed somewhere and you can't give it away. So the real equity is not in the intellectual property. The real equity is not in your mastery of marketing methods and distribution channels, because they can be taken away too. So you're right to try and own your own platforms. But even with that, see, people think access to the internet will never change. But they thought that about telemarketing. They thought that about TV infomercial. They thought that about broadcast facts. They've thought that about every media that has been radically re-regulated more than once over a period of time. So distribution channels and marketing methods are always subject to disruption, if not to destruction. So you could be an absolute genius at YouTube, but you are vulnerable to YouTube. So the only real equity is in your customer and the goodwill and relationship you have with that customer. That's the only thing you can actually own, control, manage, and have lifelong value in it. So a critically important question is what I'm doing today contributive to having what I call lifers? Customers who will be with you until one of you dies or you quit. There's really where all your equity is. The second point is about control. So there's an equation, a success equation, a wealth equation. I don't like it. I've never liked it. Most people don't like it because it's not easy. But it is fact. Is if you want more control, which almost everybody does. So if you want control, you have to accept responsibility in direct proportion to the amount of control you want. Control and responsibility are inextricably linked. They have an equal sign between them. So if you want control over your finances, you will have it to the extent that you accept responsibility for being a serious student, for knowing things, for learning, for being collaborative with people who do things for you, not blindly delegating to them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you want control over your business's profits, you'll have it in direct proportion to the amount of responsibility you accept for everything that can affect those profits, which means no excuses can be tolerated, because that is denial of responsibility. You know, when I first started driving in harness races, and you would hear other drivers do it all the time. You do badly, and many will say that horse raced badly. He didn't try, he quit, whatever it was. Horse had a bad night. And one of the top drivers in the country took me aside, first year I was driving. And he said, you got to stop saying that. Even if it's true, you got to stop saying it. Because every time you say it, you abdicate all your control over the outcome. You only have control over the outcome to the degree that you'll accept responsibility for the outcome. So you never hear me say it. We finish dead last. I get out of the sulky. The trainer says to me, What happened? I always say, I drove bad. Not the horse raced bad. I drove bad. And give me another chance next week. And I'll figure out how to drive this horse better. Well, there you have it, about business, about money, about relationships, about your kids, about everything. Only to the degree that you'll accept responsibility can you get control. And so you got to accept total responsibility for the sustainability of your business. And that is all rooted in the strength of your relationship with your customers. Could you call at random 10 of your customers and say, I got something great. I can't tell you about it. I'm not going to tell you about it until you bought it. And it's $1,000. And you need to give me a credit card number right now. And how many of the 10 would say, here's my credit card number? That's important, right? I mean, that's meaningful. And you create equity and trust. You know, in the industrial age, so Andrew Carnegie, America's first billionaire from Scotland, steel magnate. Carnegie said, take away my factories, take away my machinery, take away my inventory, take away everything but my men, and I'll have it all back in 36 months. Now, in the industrial age, he had it right. Really, the quality of the men who came to work every day and ran the machinery and made the factory work and kicked out the product, that was actually where the equity was. Today, the statement is slightly altered. And I would say it, I'd rather you didn't, by the way, but take away everything. But leave me my customers. I'll have it all back in 36 months or less. We have a saying, again, colloquially, I use the term herd. I don't mean it disrespectfully, but about customers. So we have a saying called, we'll send an invoice to the herd. It's a version of the John Lennon quote. And so when I was divorced and divided all the assets and announced it to the customers, the members, many of them were savvy enough, trying to be humorous and helpful, that they faxed or they sent notes or they left phone messages that said, we know you're going to be sending an invoice to the herd. Because they knew. And I had it all back in 12 months because of the strength of the relationship with the customers. So anything you do that hurts that, anything, you're eating away your equity. And you got to be careful about trading a short-term buck for permanent damage to your equity.
Which is the old thing of building a brand. I mean, you can start by selling products and slowly you build your brand up. But sooner or later, you will have to do some investments, which will not return capital immediately. But they will, I mean, this money will create a stronger bond between you and them. And I see a lot of people not doing it. It's just unbelievable.
They want to take all the money off the table. And so they'll spend all their marketing on new customer acquisition and nothing on customer care on relationship. And that's not smart. It's only smart if you brought in really low value customers to start with and you don't care about sustainability. But otherwise, you have to be willing to and budget for reinvestment in the relationship with the customers. You can't just show up to sell something. You have to show up at sometimes to be just informational, to be just motivational, to be just entertaining. You have to dispense recognition for their good behavior. You have to invest in these things because you're investing in the only real equity over which you have complete control is my relationship with you. I have 100% responsibility for it. It's not your job to feel good about me. It's my job to make sure you feel good about me. And so I've got to invest in that.
Okay. Right. How many more minutes do we have?
Just a tick under 10. We
tick
have like
under
7
10.
minutes.
7 minutes. Okay. So since we have 7 minutes, what can you share with us in the last 7 minutes? Something important, something that you'd like my students to know in their business life or with money in general, something that maybe somebody has shared with you, an important lesson that you've learned.
There's often new media usually added to the mix. Old media actually doesn't die. Legacy media takes a long time to die and is valuable and useful long after people are pronouncing it dead. But there is new media that comes along. There's new tools that come along. Automation, database software. I'm 66 years old. Database software came along as a new tool. Database software, first 20 years of my career were different colored 3x5 cards. That was database software. So there's new tools. Sometimes there's new techniques. We'll discover more sophisticated ways of doing things, deeper understanding of ways of doing things. You might think NLP, mirroring, as an example, with Bandler and Grindler. But there are never any new fundamentals. And anytime somebody is telling you that new media, new tools, or new techniques create new fundamentals, they're either fools or deliberate con artists. It almost doesn't matter which they are. They are dangerous and harmful. Jim Rohn's great line was, anytime he's talking to you about new fundamentals, that's like somebody inviting you to their factory to see where you're making the new antiques. So it's really important to learn and respect and keep somewhat anchored to time-honored, time-tested, proven, reliable success fundamentals, advertising and marketing success fundamentals, selling success fundamentals. None of the new that has occurred in my entire career has changed any of those fundamentals. For a while, for example, everybody, launch, online launches. Fine. Combination of new tools, new techniques, no new fundamentals. Group presentation is a group presentation is a group presentation. There's structures for it. There's bases that have to be gone through: first base, second base, third base. You don't get to jump to home. There's no new fundamentals for it. And if you don't know the fundamentals, you're at risk. You really can make a lot of mistakes or engage in a lot of experimentation that is unnecessary and expensive.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Pleasure.
you for being with us.